DZ, Tim Hauraney, and Nelson Valkenburg joining us from Viaplay over in the Netherlands. Let's talk about Max Verstappen, of course. So I feel like on this side over here, it's mostly been about not his driving whatsoever. It's always just kind of in the last 2 weeks, mostly just been about the drama that took place, obviously, between him and George Russell. Obviously now the penalty point involved and how he might race this weekend. And not much about the fact that he could obviously break that record with a fourth straight win here in Canada. But we are curious, what's the discussion look like in the Netherlands?
I think the discussion was very similar to maybe here in Canada and the rest of the world, but we tend to look at what happened, maybe not so much with a smile, but maybe like a smirk, but of course it was going to happen. If it was anyone he was going to hit, it maybe would have been George. There's some beef there, there's some history there. It's indefensible, and the penalty points were applied, I think, correctly, but yeah, we sort of saw it as a little bit of popcorn drama, very much entertaining.
But he really does have to keep his nose clean for the next two races because he doesn't have those 2 penalty points coming off his license until June 30th. So, yeah. I mean, that's, as a driver, I mean, you're really having to be really on it to make sure you're not overstepping anything. I mean, even Nelson going through like a waved double yellow flag like that,
or impeding.
Yeah, right there, and that's a penalty point.
I think we forget that Max Verstappen is the king of doubling down.
Yeah.
And if he gets a penalty point for something he doesn't agree with, so be it. I think there is no way he can battle the McLarens without going full pull. He'll have to go for it. And also, I think with the world titles and the way he races and the success he's had, I think he's just going to go for it and see what's going to happen. Doubling down.
So the leopard doesn't sort of change its spots, right?
It never has.
Yeah, and as a driver, like, just genetically, you just can't really bend or break on anything that you do on the track.
Yeah.
Tim and you spoke in Miami, and it was a bit of a temperature check on how he was feeling with his relationship with Red Bull. How do you think that's changed between now and then? Because, you know, obviously they are fourth in the constructors. There's still a little bit of that magic in the air about the driver market and where he might end up. But
very much.
How do you think that's changed at all since now and even Miami?
I think everybody's sort of holding their fire. I think everybody was looking at Barcelona. Is this the reset? Is this the moment that McLaren is reeled in? It didn't happen in Barcelona. But I think temperatures also have cooled a little bit on all the discussions. Someone told me in the Red Bull camp, it's always the deal that isn't talked about that suddenly gets a press release. So maybe the fact that it has gone quiet means that there's something brewing. The thing that I was most interested by was Toto Wolff and the reaction to the George Russell incident. He was so non-committal.
Yeah, he didn't give much, did he?
Not even a hint of being pissed off.
Yeah.
And that's when I thought, oh, they're negotiating.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Like, you could, he was pressed. Toto was pressed about it, and he never really gave an opinion on what he actually thought about the incident. Yep. And so I guess as a journalist, you have to sort of, that triggers the old spidey senses, being like, oh, maybe there is something actually going on here at the moment. But I mean, it's interesting. I talked to George yesterday, and I mean, he seemed to think that there was a lot of alignment between himself and Mercedes and himself and Toto Wolff, and I'm not too sure if that is like contract negotiation going on behind the scenes, like if there's a lot of back and forth that is happening between the two, because it did seem like it at the time.
I'm hearing that he's shopping around and that he's still talking mostly to Aston Martin, maybe to Alpine, that it isn't a done deal at Mercedes. But a lot hinges on this as well, because I have a feeling Charles Leclerc at Ferrari is secretly looking at the driver market and think, if it's not Ferrari that's going to give me the opportunity to go for a world title, where do I go then? And there's a lot hanging on if Verstappen goes anywhere.
Yeah, it's such an interesting component to the whole sort of silly season. And even if you do have a long-term agreement like Max and Red Bull do have, I mean, it's fascinating to think, even talking Charles Leclerc, imagine if he left Ferrari. That would be, oh my God. I couldn't even think about it. Yeah, it would be massive.
Well, silly season's always entertaining, obviously. Yeah. We like talking about where these guys might end up. Let's talk about Max the driver once again. Obviously, you know him in and out. Canada, it's a circuit that he enjoys. He's got that chance for a fourth win here. What do you think he loves so much about this, and how do you think he's actually going to end up doing this weekend?
I think he'll be great. I think what he excels at the best is finding grip easily and understanding what the conditions are. And Montreal is very changeable. If nothing else, this track changes from session to session massively. And he seems to be able to adapt so quickly to that. We saw it early in FP1. We've seen it in the rain. He just finds the grip, and it gives him an advantage during qualifying. That's, I think, why this track suits him, and it's rewarding for balls out driving. If you go for it here, you get rewarded, and it suits his driving style.
Yeah, for sure. Like just looking at what he was doing in FP1, like very much attacking the circuit as much as possible. And I think also for Max, right? Like this is sort of like redemption weekend from what happened in Spain. Like he's coming out here to prove a point, and also to try and cut his way back into this Drivers' Championship, which Nelson, at the beginning of Spain, he didn't feel like this was even a championship battle. Now, I can't believe he even said that in the media during Spain.
He's been very clear that he doesn't feel part of the battle, but he is fired up. He's so fired up for this weekend.
Do you think?
I just don't know how you can say that. That's my only thing, because like he clearly at that point coming into Spain he was right there. Like he was right there. And
yeah, but it's also to show to the team, it's not me, it's you. If you don't give me the car to fight McLaren, we're not in this battle. I'll be pushing as hard as I can. It's a way of transferring, the pressure to the team, because he's doing all he can anyway. Yeah.
Is there a number in your head, whether arbitrary or not, because it always feels like that, where the gap would feel a bit too large for Max to still be in this title hunt? Let's just say even after this weekend, with how things may go?
We've always thought like 50 points is maybe insurmountable with the way McLaren actually runs, but on the other hand, if it clicks and there are a few races like Brazil and McLaren drivers find each other on track, everything can change. I don't think he actually loses any sleep over whether or not he becomes a champion. It's not about that. It's about being the best on any given day. And if that leads to a championship, another one, that's great. He just wants to be the best and not rack up another title. He wants to be the best every session. That's what sets him apart.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think one of the things is with Max, it's always everyone's playing checkers and Max is playing chess with a lot of these drivers. He just operates on such a high level that there aren't many out there who could get up to that height. I mean, for some drivers they can, but it takes time. It takes experience. But for Max, I always find it interesting when he just knows the rule book inside and out. You mentioned Brazil. If you go back to Brazil last year, and the start procedure, and like he was back in whatever it was, 15th or whatever it was, and he knew like what everyone else was doing, like further up the grid, and how like that's a penalty. I don't know how he picked that up. Like that. Just that right there shows it.
But going back to Barcelona, one thing that was proven, to me at least, is that he really does care. He may give the impression that he's laid back and, hey, I've got titles, it's about the day. I just said it is about the day, but he blew up in the head. He really wants to be the best. It's not about just driving rounds, and that makes it super interesting for the rest of this weekend.
One last question for you. What's one misread that you think the rest of the world misses on Max Verstappen? Because in the Netherlands, as you said, you know this guy, you know this driver, you know how he answers. We've talked about it before. Dutch are different from other people. Canadians are different from other people. We have that. What's one thing that you think kind of we miss on Max from the outside?
I think Max is a very morally driven guy. I think for him, right and wrong is very clear cut, and he lives and dies by those morals. And you could see, and that's why it was valuable to me, that on the Monday he knew he did something wrong with Russell, and he owned up to it in his own way. But I think he is way more moral than a lot of people would give him credit for. I think he's been cast in the villain category a little bit too often. He just races to a very clear set of morals, and he doesn't play games with nobody, but also not with himself.
Actually, before we go, even though we did say one last question, let's do one more.
I do the same. Yeah.
No, but when you look at Max and having a bit of a meltdown in Spain, is that like a weakness that you think he would work on in the off season, or do you think it happened once, it may happen again, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing?
He is on the limit of everything, including what he can take emotionally. That mindset has given him titles. That has given him an edge in a battle. And if it bites him in Barcelona, it has given him so much more on balance. He will never change, and I don't think he should change.
Well, Max is on the limit. He's also on the edge of history, as we've said. He's got 3 wins here. He can make it 4 in a row. Schumacher's won here the most times, along with Lewis Hamilton. But the record of 4 in a row, Max, you could have that by the end of the weekend.